Good evening. My name is Andreas Schüller, and I'm working with the European Center for Constitution and Human Rights, the ECCHR. I'd like to thank the Aeham and MENA Prison Forum, especially Bernhard Hillenkamp, as well as Medico International for the excellent collaboration and support in preparing this event. We will hear tonight from and about Yarmouk and about international crimes that have been committed there, especially the siege of the neighborhood and the starvation of the remaining population during the war in Syria. As ECCHR, we are heavily engaged in trials across Europe regarding international crimes committed in Syria, but also in many other conflicts, such as in Gaza. There are two main reasons that led us to this event tonight. First, many survivors from Yarmouk are today living in Germany and in Europe. They are now giving testimony of what has happened in Yarmouk in a trial currently taking place in Koblenz, Germany, and in another trial in Sweden. Second, while some accused are standing trial today, starvation was and is used as a method of warfare elsewhere, first and foremost in Gaza and Sudan, without judicial investigations, without testimonies of those being targeted. At the same time, the trial in Koblenz largely takes place without any public notice. The court prevents trial monitoring and access to interpretation for an interested audience and those affected. We hope that this event will give some more visibility to enormous crimes that are happening in front of our eyes without accountability. And with that, I pass it on to my colleague Mario Neumann of Medico International.
Thank you, Andreas. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mario Neumann. I'm the Berlin representative of Medico International, and I'm happy to welcome you all to this event. On November 27, in the year 24, we jointly launched the Understanding Prison series here at this stage, and we are now introducing its 7th evening. What has happened since then? An incredible amount of political events, most of them catastrophic in the MENA region. The fact that we launched this series already had to do with the fact that we had cancelled a conference originally planned for December 23 at the last minute due to the events of October 7 and the war and genocide against Gaza. When we then organized a concert here on this stage with former Sednaya prisoners to kick off the series in November 24, the panel discussion on the decades of horror in Sednaya also seemed like an exchange about something that is and will remain eternal and forever. We realized just how wrong we were only a few hours later when the first reports of the beginning of the Assad regime's collapse in Syria reached Western news outlets in just that night. This event was followed, among others, by a debate on Lebanon and another on Iran, both held here at Aeham, and both took place simultaneously, unplanned simultaneously, with the respective Israeli attacks on the two countries. In recent weeks, at the Syrian-Lebanese border, so where a few kilometers away Ummam is based, or its headquarters is based, where for over a decade, Syrian migrants had sought refuge from the horrors in Syria. People fled from Lebanon to Syria to seek safety there from the bombings, while in Iran, the Great War continues. This is not the only sign. Much remains uncertain, and in the worst sense, nothing is certain anymore in the MENA region. Nevertheless, in times of such upheaval, what is often needed is precisely what we have no time for, a look back at history. That is also why I'm pleased that today, despite everything, we are hosting the 7th edition and are finally turning our attention to Yarmouk and the 2014 siege, where Medico was active at the time and supported the Jafra Foundation. Yarmouk is being starved. The catastrophe is political. We headlined back then. It could just as easily be about today. I wish you all an interesting and, despite everything, inspiring evening, and want to thank everybody, especially Bernhard and the How, who made this event possible.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you, Andreas. My name is Bernhard Hillenkamp. I'm the Germany coordinator of UMAM and responsible for the MENA Prison Forum activities here in Berlin. Welcome to the 7th edition. already explained by Mario. A special thanks also goes out to Susanne Henschel, who supported, who was the idea giver and also contributed many ideas and most of the participants to this event. So thanks, Susanne, for that. And allow me also to say some words about and the initiative MENA Prison Forum. is a Lebanese NGO with an office here in Berlin, and it was founded in 2005 by Monika Borgmann and Lokman Slim. can be best described as an organization which is dealing with the past. And by this, I mainly mean dealing with a violent past in Lebanon, but also the MENA region. The MENA Prison Forum is an initiative of It brings together former detainees, artists, filmmakers, researchers, lawyers, and activists to rethink together prison, torture, and trauma. And throughout all this, it advocates for a culture of accountability and justice in all levels of society. And this is, so to speak, the connection to this event today also. As organizations engaging with artistic expression in the relation to current and historical events, we aim to open up new conversations through artists' works, offering voices from the region and creating new entry points into complex and contested issues. Tonight's event will begin with an artistic part, the pianist Aeham Ahmad, who lived the siege of Yarmouk, and through his music, he gave the people living under the siege a voice. His musical resistance was covered by international media and reached the world. He will perform together with the oud player and activist Wassim Mukdad, who served as a paramedic during the siege. In addition, pieces from Aeham Ahmad's book will be read by the artist Lujain Mustafa. This is the first part. In the second part, we will have a panel discussing the issue already mentioned. It will be moderated by medical coordinator for Palestine and Israel, Riad Othman, with 3 speakers, 2 of them closely connected to Yarmouk and the siege. Nemat Khaled, a former resident of Yarmouk, journalist and author, now living as a refugee in Berlin, and Wassim Mukdad, the musician, but also activist and paramedic during the siege. They will reflect on their experience during the siege, and also, they will discuss the history and the present of Yarmouk. A broader international perspective will be brought in by the human rights advocate Dalia Qumsieh from Palestine, who will discuss patterns of violence such as hunger as a method of warfare. The systematic siege of civilians, and we will also talk about international accountability, and not only in the context of Syria, but also will touch upon Gaza. Susanne wanted me to be short, so therefore allow me to say thank you for being here. Although the weather is fine, you found your way to the How. This is very nice. We hope for an interesting evening. Afterwards, we will have at VOW in How 2. We can have further discussions. Please join us for beverages there. 2 more technical remarks. We will have not a break, So when we will change stage, please stay. Only if you need a translation device, please get it, because other than we have announced, the event will be in spoken Arabic and English, and translation is supplied in to both languages. So if you don't speak Arabic, you need a translation device. Please welcome now Aeham Ahmad, Wassim Mukdad, and Lujain Mustafa. Thank you.
at television, we saw shaky cell phone videos of sporadic protests in Damascus. On March 15, a crowd of about 150 demonstrators made their way through the historic Hamidiyya market, chanting, "God, Syria, freedom, and nothing else." This was a stab at the government-organized marches where people were required to chant, "God, Syria, Bashar, and nothing else." Was it on this day that the Syrian uprising began, or was it 3 days later, on March 18, 2011, when parents marched in front of a police station in Daraa, in southern Syria, demanding that their sons and daughters be released? The teenagers had been arrested 1 month before when one of them had sprayed onto a wall, "The regime must fall." In Yarmouk, all this arrived with some delay. After all, we were Palestinians. We obediently avoid Syrian politics. Just like my parents had always taught me, I had no interest in getting involved with protests in the streets. I preferred to stay home and work on my music. My student talked about these events as if they were happening far away and not on our doorstep. Many Palestinians were in a quandary. On the one hand, we were indebted to the Syrian state, which had welcomed us so generously as refugees, more generously than other countries in the region. But on the other hand, many of us sympathized with the demonstrators. Our local politicians in Yarmouk warned us to remain neutral. "We are keeping out of domestic political conflicts," was the preferred phrasing by left and right, from Fatah to Hamas to Islamic Jihad. Domestic political conflicts. A strange thing to say, considering we had been living there for over 60 years. Many of us realized that refugees could quickly become scapegoats. But our neighborhood was meant to be a safe haven for refugees, and they came. Palestinians in Daraa and Homs had joined the demonstrations and paid dearly. Many people in Yarmouk helped wherever they could, bringing blankets and clothing or taking in entire families. It would take another year and a half before the war reached our neighborhood. During that time, the Syrian revolution turned increasingly bloody, but life in Yarmouk went on as before. Our business was still thriving. We sold 12 kinds of oud strings and 6 kinds of violin strings. The shop was always full of music students. Among them were there 3 female college students. They supported the revolution with heart and soul. The 3 of them continued taking piano lessons with me, even though the journey to Yarmouk became increasingly dangerous. "Why do you keep coming here?" I once asked the young woman. "Isn't it dangerous?" "You are just a good teacher," Rania answered. "And inexpensive too." Well, an honest response. Around noon on December 16, 2012, I was in the shop playing piano when suddenly there was a heavy explosion nearby, then a second one. People were shouting that a jet had shot a rocket at the Mansoura school, my old middle school. That night, my father and I sat up together for a long time, and I told him what I had seen. "Why Yarmouk?" he asked, full of sorrow. The bomb had dug deep into the basement of the mosque, where dozens of families had found shelter. More than 40 people had been killed. The next morning, we got up at 6. It was still early, but when we looked out of the shop window, we saw our neighbors moving bags and suitcases out of the building and into the street. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Visiting relatives, just for a few days." This didn't look like a short visit. Though it was still early, There must have been tens of thousands of people carrying bags and suitcases, pushing carts, pushchairs, and bicycles loaded with boxes. This is what must have looked like during the Nakba, the mass exodus from Palestinian in 1948. route was completely sealed off. Army sharpshooters lurked at every exit point, supported by the militias. Yarmouk was turning into a ghost town. The silence was eerie. The shouting of the salesmen, the laughter of children, the joyous cries of mothers, the boys whistling after girls, the girls seemingly annoyed, speeding up their steps, Abu Muhammad smoking his shisha at the corner, Abu Bilal hawking his chickpeas, all gone. Just like my students, my customers, my friends. Yesterday, 500,000 people lived here, and now there were maybe 50,000 people left at most. We had heard the reports coming out of Homs, Daraa, and Douma. Hundreds of thousands of people had been encircled by the army and starved to death. In the end, people had been reduced to eating clover and leaves, hoping to stall the inevitable. Was that to be our fate as well? It happened on July 18, 2013. Yarmouk was completely sealed off. From one day to the next, the checkpoints were closed, no one got out, nothing got in, no rice, no oil, no milk powder, no sugar. The siege began. The electricity was turned off, food price exploded. Soon, people started dying of hunger. On August 18, a 6-month-old girl died while her mother was crisscrossing Yarmouk in a desperate search for baby food. The next victim was a man with kidney disease. Their death unsettled everyone. Do I look sick? People would ask each other. My eyes are red. What does that mean? We didn't even have coffins anymore. Wood had become too expensive. The bodies were brought to the cemetery on a stretcher. During the funeral processions, people carried the body on their shoulders and chanted, Yarmouk, Yarmouk is neutral. Open the gates, oh Yarmouk, Yarmouk is here. The newspapers in Europe wrote that Yarmouk was a death camp. Only 18,000 people out of 650,000 were said to be alive here. There was only one commercial area left, Uruba Street. Previously, it had been the flea market of Yarmouk. Now, it became an apocalyptic shopping mall. Some people sold wood, which had been taken from sofas. Other households' goods had been stolen from warehouses and shops, like the sacks of cinnamon sticks that had been loaded from a spice depot. There were days when a large flat-screen TV was sold for a cigarette, or a cigarette exchanged for a refrigerator or a washing machine. A persistent rumor was that you could get a 25-kilogram sack of rice for a kidney. With pale, sallow faces, people stumble from one booth to the next. One day, I had a crazy idea. I said to my mother, what if we use the lentils to make falafel? What? She asked, astonished. Falafel? For weeks, I'd been walking past those sacks of lentils, and all the time, people were starving. I had to do something. Falafel are normally made from chickpeas, but I was convinced it could be done with the red lentils. Finally, I had something to do. A few days later, I opened my makeshift falafel stand. Soon, the locals started lining up. Driven by hunger, people came from far, and they didn't seem to mind standing in line for an hour. On some days, I made falafel from 8 in the morning until 7 in the evening. My starving customers were beaming with joy when they bit into the hot falafel. Still, I felt miserable. What had I become? Not too long ago, I had dreamed of music career, and now I was crouching on the ground, frying falafel dough, my clothes full of oil stains, What had I done to deserve this? At one point, Tahani, my wife, came out and asked, "Why don't you play something for everyone? Come, I'll bring you the accordion." I began to play a song by Ferouz that everyone knew. The depressed glances brightened. The boys began to sing along. And then another one, and another one. It turned into a beautiful evening.
Waterman song of my composition, we get to know Wassim, me and Wassim in all time, and I see him again in the Yarmouk lager. He was working in a doctor in the hospital there, helping people, and I asked Wassim, why you are here? We are nobody here. Why you come from Damascus to Yarmouk come? And he said, for me, very easy, looks like how every time shining and clear. He said, for me, I would like to help people. And we played also together, you remember? And we eat kibbeh in this day. My mom, she have some rest burgul, and she make for us kibbeh, not falafel from lentils. And Abu the Waterman, it's some music what I composed for the guy. He carried the water every day, and he starved and fight with his life, and it looks like all of us. But Abu Mahmoud was extra because he was old and he can carry the heavy weight of the water, and he was complaining very loud. And this is why I make this song for him, and I will sing for you his complaining. والساعة تمشي مثل كل يوم والسهر بيدور عشوية نوم والساعة تمشي مثل كل يوم والسهر بيدور عشوية نوم الساعة تمشي والليل بعده ليل الساعة تمشي والليل بعده ليل والوقت صعب يطول والقمر ما بيكمل والوقت صعب يطول والقمر ما بيكمل والساعة تمشي والوجع صعب
It was early November when a man named Abu Muhammad approached me. He was in his mid-40s, large and heavy with a receding hairline. Before the war, he had been one of my voice students, a baritone who worked hard and was always on time. "Hello, Aeham," he said. "Abu Muhammad," I called out. "You are still in Yarmouk." We talked for a while, and finally he said, "Aeham, I would like to start a corps. We need someone to accompany us on the keyboard. I was thinking of you." People are starving, I said. In times like this, who cares about music? Let me worry about that. I will get a group together. He wanted to call it Summit, Steadfast. He said he would take care of everything. You just bring your keyboard, I will get some people together, and then we will sing. Just like in the old good days. I liked him, and I felt like making music again, so I agreed. 11 men had shown up to sing with us. We all introduced ourselves. The man who had unlocked the door for us turned on a generator. The room lit up, and the ditas on my keyboard began to glow. So we began singing scales as simple to see who could hit the notes. It was all right, but no more than that. My right hand was in pain. The men were humming out of tune. But still was fun to sit at a keyboard after all those months. After an hour, bang. The lights went out. The generator had run out of fuel. But the men were happy. Finally, I know how to sing, one of them said. During our second rehearsal, the guys already sounded a little better. I had an idea. Why do cover versions of songs by other people? We should sing about us, about Yarmouk, about the hunger, the bombs, the desolation. I asked around if anyone felt like writing a poem that I could then set to music. As I was walking home, I began composing and soon had the melody in my head. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before. Once I got home, I sat down at the piano, played the motive, added an intro. Less than 2 hours later, the song was finished. We went to the middle school and went inside into the playground. This was where the first rocket had hit. This was where our first performance would be. The symbolic concert at the first bomb crater, the first crack that had run through our world. We tilted the cart and piano back upright again. Then I set up a chair and my mobile orchestra was complete. It was our first time making music out amid the rubble. My piano sounded out of tune, echoing through my old middle school. In hindsight, it was an incredible step we had taken, playing "Oh, You Immigrants, Return" out under the open sky, just like that. Later, we pushed the piano back to the shop. We were in a good mood because making music makes people happy. In time, our music became a symbol. It was an image anyone could grasp. I played piano to spit Assad. We countered the bombing attacks with satirical songs. We countered violence with art. Despite this hardship, despite the terrors, or maybe because of this, the first 6 months of 2014 turned out to be the most productive time of my life. Music was just bubbling out of me. In the morning, we lined up for the UNRWA box. Then we went to get water or clover. In the afternoon, the Yarmouk boys, that's what we called ourselves, met in the shop to rehearse. We briefly practiced a new song. Then we pushed the piano out into the streets and used our music to make light of our misery. Whenever we pushed the piano through the deserted streets, we forgot about our empty stomachs. We felt powerful. We weren't alone anymore. We had a mission. We wanted the world to see what was going on here. We wanted to show how Assad was killing us, and that what we were standing up to him.
يا بهار شو بخبر اسمي عن شهر عن شهر 5000 عام ولن نتعلم يا دمشق يا دمشق يا دمشق نموت جياعا في دمشق تطير القمامات خلف هياج الحمير على دمشق على درويش على وطني على وطني وطن اليتامى وطن المحاصرين أرى فيلم المصارع يوميا نذهب إلى الحلبة واثقين من الموت يا وطني الياسمين يا وطني يا وطن الذكريات يا وطن المعتقلين.
Thank you very much. My name is Riad Othman. I'm the coordinator for Israel and Palestine with Medico International. And I have the honor to be the moderator of this conversation tonight. So let me briefly introduce my very distinguished guests. Here in the center is Nemat Khaled. She's a Palestinian writer, the author of several collections of short stories and novels. She's been working as a teacher with UNRWA for 15 years after completing the Teachers Training Institute. She's also studied law at the University of Damascus. One of her novels is available in German. It's called Henna Night. Another recently completed novel should be coming forth anytime soon. It's been handed in with the publisher. It's called The Books of Gaza. And she's currently working on a new project called Christina in the Camp. Nemat is said to know Yarmouk and its history like few others in Yarmouk, from Yarmouk. So please welcome Nemat Khaled. And to my left is Dalia Qumsieh from Bethlehem in Palestine. Dalia, you're a human rights lawyer based on the West Bank. You're specializing in human rights advocacy. You've been registered with the Palestinian bar since 2013. Dalia is a graduate of Besiege University and obtained a degree in international law and international administration from the Law School of the University Paris 1, aka the Sorbonne. Ouais. And you've worked with various Palestinian human rights organizations as a senior legal advocacy consultant, and eventually Dalia has founded the Balasan Initiative for Human Rights in Palestine and is its director. Thank you very much for being with us, Dalia. Please welcome her on stage. Finally, although you changed clothes, but you'll recognize a familiar face over there. It's Wassim. Wassim's been introduced before, but very briefly, so let me maybe add a little bit to your persona. You're not only a Berlin-based musician with Syrian origins, who's obviously very well playing the oud, you're also a doctor. You went to Yarmouk during the siege to volunteer as a medic. Here in Germany, and I guess also in other countries, Wassim has been playing with various ensembles. Actually, could you call it musical activism, perhaps? Because, I mean, part of your engagements were to build bridges, foster dialogue between cultures, and advocate for peace in the face of stereotyping, racism, and war. You've been a witness in the Al-Khatib trials in Koblenz. You've been arrested several times and tortured both by the Syrian regime and Al-Qaeda. And as I said before, you're a doctor, so it rests a little bit on you that we'll all feel better by the end of the conversation. The conversation is structured in 3 parts, and we don't have so much time. So the first part is dealing with the history of Yarmouk, while the second part is dealing more with starvation as a means of warfare and a war crime or crime against humanity, depending on how systematically it's being applied. And the last part would be looking at accountability and legal mechanisms. And I'd like to actually direct my first question mainly at you, Nemat, as a longtime resident of Yarmouk, and maybe also a little bit at you, Wassim. And I wondered, I would strongly assume that the majority of people here in Germany, probably not in this audience, but in Germany, in Europe, had really never heard of Yarmouk before it became the site of mass atrocities and starvation. So it has become known as a symbol mainly of destruction, war crimes. But I'd really like to understand, I'd like you to make us understand what was unique about Yarmouk as a place of the Palestinian diaspora, but also maybe as a place in Syria before 2011, before the war, and also maybe if you take a broader look, if you compare it to any of the other officially recognized camps in Syria or in the region, be it Jordan or Lebanon.
ما بعرف الصوت شغال هيك؟ اوكي. طبعا مخيم اليرموك هو مو مجرد حي، هو قصة طويلة من اللجوء والتحول والذاكرة والشتات. تشكل مخيم اليرموك فعلياً عام 1957. أنشئ جنوب دمشق لاستيعاب اللاجئين الفلسطينيين الذين هجروا إبان النكبة عام 1948. في البداية ما كان منظم المخيم كما يعرفه الناس قبل الثورة السورية. كان منطقة من الخيام، بعد شوي بلشت الناس تعمر بيوت بسيطة. الناس هم اللاجئين نفسهم اللي كانوا يعمروا البيوت. بعد شوي بالستينات والسبعينات أعتقد مع مرور الوقت صار شيء اسمه مخيم اليرموك، حي كبير متكامل بنيت فيه مدارس ومراكز صحية بدعم من الأونروا. بعدين ظهرت فيه أسواق ومال كدأب أهل المخيم في العمل، واستقرت فيه عائلات فلسطينية من كل المدن الفلسطينية يعني إبان النكبة. لذلك صرنا نشوف المخيم عاصمة للشتات الفلسطيني في سوريا. ورغم أنه مخيم إلا أنه ما كان معزول عن المحيط، كان مندمج ثقافياً وعمرانياً وسياسياً واقتصادياً بالحالة السورية وبدمشق لأنه هو جنوب دمشق. المخيم كان القارات الخمس، لمن يعرف القارات الخمس في هذا العالم، كان فيه من أستراليا، من أمريكا، من أوروبا، من شرق آسيا، يابان، نيوزيلندا، ألمانيا، فرنسا، كل العالم كان موجود في المخيم، وكان يشكل حالة من التلاقح الثقافي والالتقاء الغير عادي للناس. وبنفس الوقت هو كان حاضنة للمعارضة السورية من كل المحافظات السورية كانوا موجودين في مخيم اليرموك. في مخيم اليرموك ما كان ينقصنا إلا أنه يكون في جامعة، كان عندنا المراكز الصحية، المحاكم، الأسواق، البلديات، كل هذه التفاصيل فقط، والمستشفيات كان عندنا عديد من المشافي، ما كان ينقصنا إلا الجامعة. إلى أن حصلت الثورة السورية وكانت الحرب، وكان القرار بأن يزول المخيم عن هذه الخارطة كأنما هو استجابة لأجندة إقليمية دولية أنا لا أعلم، لكن المخيم اتدمر. ببساطة هذا جزء من تاريخ المخيم. بالنسبة إلي أنا كوحدة، أنا حافظة المخيم مثل المرأة ما بتحفظ معالم ابنها بالعتمة، أنا حافظة معالم المخيم كله. حافظة المخيم أكثر من لون عيوني. أنا بعرف المخيم، أنا ما بعرف لون عيوني بس بعرف المخيم حاراته بتفاصيله. المخيم كان خارطة فلسطين، شوارعه مسماة على أسماء القرى والمدن الفلسطينية. بتلاقي هون شارع صفد، هون شارع الكرمل، هون شارع كفر قاسم، هون شارع لوبيا. كل القرى الفلسطينية متجذرة بحاراتها وبمناطقها في المخيم. وبالبداية كانت الهوية هوية مناطقية بالمخيم، يعني أهل صفوريا ساكنين لحال، أهل صفد لحال، أهل لوبيا لحال. لكن بعد فترة، بعد ما صار في حراك سياسي بالمخيم، صارت الناس توعى لحالة تبدل هوياتي له علاقة بالقضية الفلسطينية. بالتالي صارت حالة الانغماس ما بين أهل فلسطين من الداخل ضمن الحارات، يعني بطل جوتيات، يعني بمعنى أهل لوبيا لحاله لا، صار كله متداخل، وصار يتوسع المخيم شرقا وغربا شمالا وجنوبا، صار يروح باتجاه التقدم، باتجاه العروبة، باتجاه شارع 30، باتجاه الحجر الأسود، باتجاه منطقة التضامن. بطل المخيم هو المنطقة المحصورة ما بين شارعي اليرموك وفلسطين. أرجو أكون أني قدمت شيء بسيط عن تاريخ المخيم. شكرا.
Thank you, Nemat. That was very insightful and very concise, which I appreciate very much. But if you look at this space or like a neighborhood in town, because I mean, when I spent a year in Damascus in 2008, 2009, so 2 years before the revolution started, and someone took me to Yarmouk for the first time, it really struck me that it was not at all how I had imagined a Palestinian refugee camp. It was just almost like a regular neighborhood, at least if you looked at the main street that ran through the camp that was lined with shops. And then, of course, in side streets, it was much narrower. And we've heard in the first part of this event tonight that people tried to be neutral, that people were chanting, Yarmouk is neutral. Then why attack it? And how did, maybe that's really a question to both of you, who were the main actors in causing Yarmouk to be dragged into this, what was called like a domestic conflict, right? So who were the dramatis personae of what unfolded there? Whoever feels.
في الحقيقة احنا حاولنا يا رياض انه ما ندخل المخيم بالحالة السورية، والتقينا مع جزء من المعارضة، وأنا من الناس اللي التقوا مع جزء من المعارضة اللي موجودين في جنوب دمشق. كان رأيي انه لوجستيا بمعنى خدمات للناس المعارضة يجب تحييد المخيم عن حالة الصراع، وأقصد الصراع العسكري ليس الصراع المدني، لأنه بمعنى المسيرات والحراك السلمي كان أهل المخيم مشاركين فيهم، مشاركين بالتنسيقيات وإلهم مطالبهم، حالهم حال السوري. يعني نحن كنا نخضع لنفس الأجندة اللي بيخضع لها السوري في أي مكان، يعني مسألة كبت الحرية، غياب الديمقراطية، عدم المساواة والعدالة أمام القانون، التفاصيل هاي كلها كان يعاني منها الفلسطيني مثل السوري. يعني نحن فلسطينيين في سوريا يا رياض كان إن مسألة بالمعنى القانوني غير لبنان مثلا. أنا بدي أحكي عن لبنان. بلبنان لا يحق للفلسطيني العمل بإطار اختصاصه وشهادته. نحن بسوريا لا، كان يحق لنا ندرس، وهذا الحكي مو منا من عائلة الأسد، لا، هذا الحكي قانون من الخمسينات 56 57 و59 من أيام شكل القوات حتى كمان. هذا القانون موجود. الفلسطيني يعامل معاملة السوري، يدرس كما السوري، حق العمل له مثل السوري كمان، فقط لا يحق له الانتخاب، وهي مسألة سياسية ومفهومة بالنسبة لنا. لا يحق لأي فلسطيني أن يكون عضو مجلس الشعب، لا يحق للفلسطيني أن يكون وزيراً. لكن مراتب ما دون الوزير كان معاونين وزراء موجودين فلسطينيين. لكن حالة القمع اللي تعرض لها الفلسطيني هي نفس حالة القمع اللي تعرض لها السوري. لكن دخل على الخط بالحالة الفلسطينية تنظيم، يمكن ما بعرف إذا حدا بيعرفه، سمعانين في اسمه القيادة العامة. كان أمينه العام أيامها أحمد جبريل، وكان نائب أمين العام طلال ناجي، وأعضاء مكتب سياسي أنور رجا وغيره وغيرات، وهذلون كانوا شكلوا لخدمة، يعني في إطار خدمة المخابرات السورية، وتحديدا فرع فلسطين. هو الفرع 235 بس ما بعرف ليش مسمينه فرع فلسطين، يعني هي لزقة وماشية فينا. كان بالتعاون مع فرع فلسطين مع المخابرات الجوية شكلوا شيء اسمه اللجان الشعبية بمخيم اليرموك. وأي حدا كان بالمناسبة يعني المسألة ما إلها علاقة بجانب أيديولوجي، أي حدا كان جوعان ما عنده حق ثمن رغيف الخبز كان يروح على اللجان الشعبية بياخذوا 3000 ليرة بيشتري له كم رطة خبز وبيعيش، وممكن يقتل فلسطيني وممكن يقتل سوري مقابل هاي المسألة. من هون اجت مسألة دخول المخيم بحالة المواجهة مع حالة المعارضة السورية، يعني مع حالة مع المعارضة السورية، المواجهة ما بين القيادة العامة واللجان الشعبية مع المعارضة السورية والحراك السوري اللي كان سلمي بالبداية، والله لا يسامح اللي خلاه عسكري وعمل كل هاي المجازر والحرب.
I will speak in English if it's possible. It's not a problem, yeah? So, I've been to Yarmouk since I came to Damascus, 2002, moving from Homs to study medicine. So I visited Yarmouk over the years, and I had friends living there, and I met new friends. So I know exactly what you mean about seeing a street that never in your dreams think that this is a refugee camp. Like, it's not a camp, and those are not refugees. Those are, like me, more educated, sometimes more wealthy, more business oriented. The food in Yarmouk was the best. Really, like, if you want to eat shawarma in Damascus, you go to Sheikh Saad or to Yarmouk. So after the revolution started, a lot of neighborhoods around Yarmouk experienced like heavy clashes or suppression because of demonstrations, for example. So people started to leave their homes, but they didn't want to go far. So Yarmouk was a perfect place for that because, okay, this is Palestinian refugee camp. The regime narrative is we are like controlling Syria with all this repression in order to liberate Palestine. So this place should be safe. So the schools, everywhere was filled of IDPs from around the place and from other cities as well, because people came from, like, I worked with UNICEF and with UNRWA to teach children music there. So I experienced this like very hautna, like very closely. This was very inconvenient for the regime because, like, it's a big place, hundreds of thousands, and the population is growing and growing without control, and the war around, like, it was southern of it, western of it, and eastern of it. So it's a total misery around it. So there was a point where the militias, the Qiyad al-Aam militia, was having this fight with the opposition. Then the opposition took an extra step, and all of a sudden you see that these militias weren't really controlling anything on the ground, because the people don't like them even, because they were making checkpoints and stuff. So they withdrew, and all of a sudden Yarmouk was bombarded on the 24th of December 2012 with a MiG hitting Jami' Abdel Qadir. It was like the mark of like maybe a couple of days earlier, but that's, and I remember I went there on Christmas Eve, on the 25th of December, and I went to that place and I saw the blood on the walls of the mosque, and this mosque was a IDP center. So yeah, so you can see that Yarmouk as a neighborhood is so diverse that you cannot say it's only Palestinians, but most of the Palestinians in Damascus live there. Not only there, but most of them live there. There is a lot of everybody, like Nemat just said. So I believe it joining the revolution or the civil war reaching Yarmouk was unfortunately inevitable, because it is as Syrian as I am Syrian. So the fire didn't distinguish according to the papers. So it was very unfortunate. I remember the need. All of a sudden, there was a mass exodus. Yarmouk was famous with shawarma, and above the shawarma there was doctors. Like it's really a very unique constellation. Like you have shops, and above the shops you have, I believe, there was 1,700 doctors in Yarmouk street. Like it's something not normal. Like where I used to live, it wasn't like this in Damascus, but still in Yarmouk it was like this, and there was all of a sudden a mass exodus. The population don't have any enough medical service. There was no, like now as the war started, then you see how the regime also treated Yarmouk in the beginning like any other, like Douma, like Homs, like other regions.
But this was at a time when people would still be able to leave. That means also when goods were going in, where people could come out, and then later it turned into that siege.
Yeah, there was like it was gradual. Like after December 2000.
قبل الحصار المطبق، يعني قبل ما يكون إغلاق كلوز، يعني مثل برلين بعد الحرب العالمية الثانية، أنا بقصد هيك. قبل الحصار كان في حصار جزئي، كان حصار جزئي للمخيم، ممنوع حدا يدخل يفوت على المخيم إلا بالمرور من عند حاجز عند جامع البشير. عند جامع البشير أول المخيم، إحنا بنقول له البطيخة لأنه في هيك مثل شكل كرة بالصيف هاي بينزل منها مي، يعني عاملينها مثل حالة هيك سياحية. رغم إنه المخيم كان فيه كثير مراكز ثقافية بتعتني بالحالة الثقافية وبالحالة بالمسرح، بالسينما، بالرقص، بالغناء، بكل هاي التفاصيل موجودة بالمخيم. ومثل ما حكى وسيم، هناك أكثر من 1500 طبيب في مشافي، تقريبا حوالي 7-8 مشافي بالمخيم، ممكن أعدهن يعني إذا بدكم. الحالة كانت قبل الإغلاق كاملا كان في حالة من الإرباك لحالة المخيم. وسيم حكى أنه ب25 الشهر بعيد الميلاد، لا قبل هيك جاء الطيران السوري قصف جامع عبد القادر الحسيني، وقصف مجمع خيري ومشفى، والجامع كان فيه مجموعة من النازحين من منطقة حمص والتضامن والحجر. يومها كانت مجزرة بضرب الميج. يومها صارت نكبة جديدة زي نكبة 48. بس ب 48 نحن أهالينا بيحكوا لنا إنه طلعوا ولقوا حضن، لقوا الحضن السوري، الحضن اللبناني، الحضن العراقي، الحضن المصري، أي حضن كان بيحضنهم بيقدم لهم المساعدة. بمخيم اليرموك عند النكبة الجديدة كنا إحنا والسوري بالعراء، ما في حضن ياخدنا ويربت علينا هيك ويقينا مسألة البرد. أنا أتذكر ب15/12 يا وسيم إذا بتذكر، إجا الطيران قصف جامع عبد القادر الحسيني، وكانت المجزرة الأولى. ومن قبل كان عامل مجزرة بشارع الجاعونة كمان، أول قصف كان بشارع الجاعونة. ويمكن قبل شوي الشاب اللي كان عم يعزف بيانو أيهم كان عم يصرخ، وكنت حاسة حالي عم بصرخ معه. هو عم يقول يما وأنا كنت أقول له يما. وعزف اشهد يا عالم علينا وعلى بيروت، أنا كنت أقول اشهد يا عالم علينا وعلى يرموك. هيك أنا كنت أغني وأنا قاعدة هون يعني بالمسرح هون وأنا عم بطلع عليه. خليه يشهد العالم شو صار بالمخيم. أنتم مدريتم بالمخيم بعد ما صارت المجازر، بعد ما صار الموت من الجوع، لكن قبل هيك ما كان حدا يعرف شو وضع المخيم إلا من كان يزور المخيم ويعرف أن هناك في المخيم بشر وناس إلهم أرض وإلهم وطن. وكنت دائما وأنا مروحة على البيت أشتري توي الزعتر وشوية ميرامية وأقول يا ترى هالشوية الخضر هضلون معقول بيحملهم كل هالوطن وكل هالحنين؟ أسئلة فقط. شكرا.
So, yeah, I totally agree, but I would speak about the beginning of 2013. Like the goods were going in and out in 2011 and 12, yes, kind of normally, but starting from 2013, like there was a partial siege, so the cars cannot go in. That's the real problem.
Let's jump into the siege.
Yes.
Because because of the time, and
yes.
I have a question for you.
Exactly, yeah.
Since you experienced the siege in Yarmouk, and I mean sieges and also the say starvation as a weapon of war, that is probably as old as humankind, or whenever militaries would not meet on a battlefield, but when people came up with the idea to fortify their cities and stay in there. And I think this is probably historically the emergence of the idea, okay, then we have to lay siege to them and starve them out, very simple, or cut off their water supplies or whatever. But I think, I mean, it's for people who have never experienced anything like it, I think it's kind of hard to really imagine how people in a situation like that, be it in the Gaza Strip or in Yarmouk, are dealing and trying to organize their own survival. I mean, it was when we were sitting out before, I just overheard you saying and then asked you about it because you, I think you said to Dalia, or maybe, yeah, I think you told Dalia, I really don't like lentils anymore. Because everything had to be made of lentils. I mean, we heard from Aeham's book that they made falafel from lentils. That is very, I mean, that's highly unusual. But you even mentioned sweets made from lentils. So I'd be really interested if you could give us a glimpse into what it...
شوكولاتة اللي عملت من العدس.
حلو. Zaki. No, if you could really maybe make us understand what it means in terms of organizing your everyday life.
So the siege started by not allowing cars to go in, but they were allowing select, like people used to go out and then come in and say, I'm going just to take stuff out for my home. That was the official way in order to get in. So they bring bread with them or rice or whatever. That was till July 2013, where there was no motion anymore. It was like a total siege. And the siege was for Yarmouk, Hajar Aswad, Tadamun, Yelda, Babila, Hajera, like the whole area of southern Damascus. It started in the beginning with cutting the electricity, so there was no electricity 24/7 for months. Like I lived maybe 11, 12, 13 months without electricity there. And with no electricity, you start to struggle with water because there is no pumps. That's an extra layer of it. You struggle with a lot of stuff or like material that needs cooling. That's also you eliminate it. But then as the main vessel or the vein of the region was cut, there was no food coming in, nothing coming in anymore. So the region started to consume what was there already. And then we noticed that, yeah, there is a storage, like a factory where they deal with lentils, and it has a huge amounts of lentils, but you don't have anything else. And really, that's why bread was made out of lentils, sweets from lentils, lentils with lentils on top of lentils. And even that, at the end was not available anymore. So that's why I remember seeing the سوق الخضرة, like the vegetables market, turning gradually really green, like it's only leaves. Whatever grows, and people are hungry, we need to eat. So at the end, we started to eat stuff that you don't use for human consumption, actually. And I remember working at the hospital, like the cases of malnutrition started with the very young and the elderly, but then gradually it was in circulating all of us. So people come to me and say, "Doctor, I'm dizzy. When I sit, I'm dizzy. I stand up, I'm dizzy." I say, "Yeah, me too. Like, aren't you hungry?" He said, "Yes, that's it. How many kilos did you?" Then we started to make the count with the belts. How many new holes you need to insert into your belt. And then the starvation reached a level where one death after the other, and we in the hospital, we didn't have any obvious reason but malnutrition. Like a very famine, like it's a famine. So you see people that have nothing left on their body, like the photos from Auschwitz. Like it's exactly the same image with all ages, from 1 year old till 80-year-old, but through everybody. And the number of casualties of siege exceeded 180. It's 187 documented cases of death by starvation. And this, yes, and that's 187, yes. And that's what's documented. Who knows? Who knows the real, the Dunkelziffer?
I have never forgotten you, Dalia, but now as the moment has come to include you in the conversation, I'd like to hear about you, what you think, what you've heard about Yarmouk, what you know about the starvation of Yarmouk as a war crime, or even a crime against humanity, and if you look at what the Israeli army has been doing, and actually is still doing, to the Gaza Strip, what will you think? Why do regimes apply starvation as a weapon of war? And where do you see maybe commonalities and differences between the starvation of Yarmouk and Gaza? Maybe also if you look at the motives of those who perpetrate it, not just really the process, but maybe also the motivation of those who do that.
Thank you for your question, Riad. I'm truly humbled to be on this panel with amazing and courageous survivors of this atrocious crime that took place and still taking place in Palestine. I first came to learn about the siege and starvation of Yarmouk through an organization that I am currently part of, that I'm super proud to be part of, which is Huquqiyat. The ladies, my colleagues at Huquqiyat, have done an amazing job in, advocating for justice in Yarmouk. And as I was learning about this through their work, the starvation in Gaza happens. And it was particularly heartbreaking to have to witness it in real time, not as something of the past. But if we look at the commonalities, I'll start with the commonalities and then maybe perhaps explore the differences in the context and in the motivation. The commonalities really lie in using starvation as a weapon of warfare and genocide. Starvation, the essence of starvation that attacks really human dignity. It strips the individual and the community of their autonomy, of their agency, of their dignity, making them dependent on something so primal, so essential for life itself. And that is the atrociousness of this crime that is starvation. Another commonality I see is targeting the Palestinian refugeehood, the open wound of the Nakba that continues to bleed to this day. In both in Al Yarmouk, obviously, as a refugee camp, but also Gaza, it being, approximately 80% of the population in Gaza are Palestinian refugees. So this incessant state of suffering and targeting the Palestinian refugeehood. Also, another very obvious commonality is civilians being completely besieged and trapped with, you see the checkpoints in Gaza and the closure of the crossings, but also in Al Yarmouk, I see or from what I learned, checkpoints were basically death traps. It's points where people were arbitrarily arrested and then forced disappearance cases. So that's also obvious. Another thing is starvation is not only about the food. It's really about targeting all the objects and sectors that are vital for sustaining human life, including water, including the energy, electricity, and what have you, and the healthcare. In both cases, the civilian structures and the vital sectors were systematically targeted in a way that prevents any possibility for human rights, for human life. In both cases, we see the pattern. First, we impose the siege, and then we destroy civilian structures, and then we destroy the food systems. In both cases, I see interlinkages between the starvation and forced displacement that results as a direct result of starvation, and then the complete destruction that ensues in a way that prevents people from returning home. This was an explicitly announced in Gaza. The intent was to completely ethnically cleanse Gaza and annex it formally to Israel. And then these are the main commonalities, but if we look at the differences, I would say the context between both cases. In Gaza, we are talking about a starvation that's taking place in the context of a genocide. That's, legally speaking, this is obvious, but also we have to make sure that we refer to what was going on before the genocide, because since Israel's occupation, it has extensively worked on destroying the food security for Palestinians, in all of Palestine, but really in Gaza as well. Attacking food sovereignty for Palestinians, which is directly linked to the right of self-determination. We cannot separate both. It has leveled and poisoned agricultural lands, completely destroyed the fishing sector in a coastal city that is Gaza. And we see that the economy of the food in Gaza, with a percentage of 93%, was destroyed by Israel. Even before October the 7th, 2023, Gaza was largely food insecure. So this is the context in Gaza. We're talking about genocide, food sovereignty connected to the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. And in Al Yarmouk, we're talking about the very name of the starvation campaign was Kneel or Starve. It was really about subjugation as part of control, occupying the space as part of a military, military plan or objective for the Assad regime. So this is a main difference. And then we're talking about the scale between both cases. In Gaza, shortly after, October 9th, the former Israeli defense minister announced that Gaza will be completely besieged, no food, no electricity, no water. As the special rapporteur to the right of the food said, very rarely in history do we see a population, an entire population of 2.3 million people go so hungry, so completely and so quickly. And this was, we're talking about 2.3 million people, that shortly, 2 months after, they formed 80% of the people in the world who were basically at a catastrophic level of hunger. So basically, these are the main differences.
I think you'd like to add something or react, right?
Yeah, I want عم بدي أحكي عربي. أوكي، أنا بدي أحكي شغلة تعلمت من فلسفة إيمانويل كانت أعتقد أن المنظومة الأخلاقية هي منظومة كونية. يعني المجرم مجرم في أي مكان، والقاتل قاتل في أي مكان، والكاذب كاذب في أي مكان، والسارق سارق في أي مكان. يعني داليا بكل حب حكيتي عن التشابه ما بين غزة وما بين اليرموك، يتشابهون في الجريمة. كل واحد بيكمل الثاني يا جماعة الخير عن جد. يعني مسألة الحالة الإنسانية، وأنا بنتمي للهوية الإنسانية ببساطة. أنا بالنسبة لي الهوية العليا الآن هوية الإنسان. الحالة الإنسانية معدومة سواء كان في غزة أو في مخيم اليرموك. بشار بيشبه النتن كتير، يعني أنا آسفة أحكي بهاي الطريقة. والصور بغزة أنا كنت أشوف الأطفال، يعني أنا ما عشت بغزة وما بعرفها، بس أنا كنت أشوف الأطفال هم يركضوا من نحو أعمارهم. الأطفال بغزة ما بيكبروا. كنت نفس الحالة أشوفها بمخيم اليرموك. ما كان عندي ثقة بالجيل الجديد إلى أن أتت الثورة وكفكفوني. أنا أكلت كل كف منهم ولا الثاني. صنعوا زمن وصنعوا تاريخ جديد وصنعوا حالة جديدة في سوريا. أتمنى إنها تكون الأفضل بالقادم. شكرا.
I can think of another difference between the two cases, which also kind of brings us to the third topic we wanted to talk about, which is legal accountability. And the difference is that the Western countries, or the US under Barack Obama, or Germany under Merkel or Scholz, or now Friedrich Merz, they did not deliver arms to the Assad regime while it committed those crimes in Yarmouk. And they would never have said, I mean, Syria, of course, is not a party to the Rome Statute, so the International Criminal Court in The Hague is not responsible. But we have trials going on in Koblenz. It's not the first trial that's currently going on. You, Wassim, were is it called co-plaintiff, right? And a witness in the first trial. And recently, of course, we have seen that Bashar's cousin, Atif Najib, was put on trial, or is going to be put on trial in Damascus for crimes against the Syrian people. Also, a former intelligence office who's one of the main, if not the main suspect in the 2013 Tadamon massacre. Amjad Youssef has been arrested. And if you look at all of the, if you look at that broader picture of, you know, trials taking place in Koblenz against war criminals from Syria, while at the same time our government here says, okay, we're not, we're maybe siding with Israel, or we're not going to extradite Netanyahu if he comes here. And at the same time, you also have a new government in Syria where I think many of us will have quite big question marks who's going to be held accountable for which crimes, and who is going to walk away and continue with their lives under the new government in Syria. So therefore my question may be to, actually kind of to all of you, what do you expect from those various legal mechanisms in terms of really bringing justice to victims of crimes like starvation or genocide or other such war crimes, crimes against humanity?
Thank you for this question and this bringing this topic that clearly. I had the privilege to be arrested by Assad Mukhabarat and by Al-Qaeda. Unfortunately, I see now a positive development that the perpetrators of Al-Assad are labeled truly to what they did as criminals. But what I see as well that there is other criminals that are part of the government or part of the new regime. So kind of a criminal trying another criminal. Is it positive? Yes, because there is a crime took place and put it on trial is a positive development. Before that, there was, like torture in Syria was taken for granted. You do political activism, you go to jail, you will be tortured, as if it's a natural law. Now, there is a movement, like we are joining the rest of humanity in regarding this as a real crime against humanity. Now, since 2 years, I am a German citizen, so I can speak with more, not as a stranger, but as a German, that I'm very afraid that the discussion about human rights, especially in Germany, is going into the direction of who's a human are we talking about their rights and who is the perpetrator. So we go against people that we don't like, and our friends are allowed to do whatever they want. We deny the crime, and if the crime was like instated, we try to exonerate them through whatever narrative. But there is no narrative can justify use of siege and of hunger as a mean of war, as a mean of anything. Like, you are not allowed to hunger a cat, not to mention people. So I hope that something in Germany should really, like, we need to face our fears about this, like, one crime, like the crimes of the Nazis, cannot legitimize any other crime. So let's be clear about that. If we need to learn from the Nazis something, from the crimes of the Nazis, we need to learn that all humans' dignity is equal. That's the first article, all humans. And I count on civil society. I count on the human in us. And I know that governments, politicians have their calculations, but we as people, we are a force, and a big one as well.
I'd like to ask you, Dalia, and then give kind of the last word to Nemat after that. Because, I mean, I guess we're of the same opinion that we do not expect that any citizen of Israel in the near future, or even in the more distant future, is going to be tried in The Hague, let alone in Koblenz. So where does that leave you as a lawyer, and what does it do to your confidence in the international legal system, or generally the legal system, or the concept of punitive justice in legal systems?
Yes, I mean, that's a question that we get asked almost in every panel, and it's a very legitimate one for all the right reasons. We are witnessing the collapse of the entirety of, international legal frameworks and the concept of justice. That's something we struggle with every day. But truly, if I want to talk about starvation and accountability and the current legal mechanisms, starvation is a crime that is preventable. If I say preventable, that necessarily means that it can be stopped with accountability. We can guarantee it not happening again with accountability. Now, when it comes to the question of accountability, I have a few points that I would like to highlight. We start with...
Briefly, though.
Yes,
Right.
let me try to do that briefly. First, the proper framing of the crime of starvation is crucial for accountability. In what sense do I say that? Usually when we talk about starvation, we think of it as the provision of humanitarian aid, bringing the food boxes. That's not the crime of starvation. It's the very deliberate crime that basically destroys the food system, prevents deliberately the access of humans to not only food, but also, as I said, objects indispensable to life. And this framing is the first step to achieving accountability in the legal sense and in the political sense. And then we need to manage our expectations when it comes to the current international legal frameworks. I mean, we understand where the shortages are, but let's also try to build on the achievements. We have the ICJ case, which South Africa against Israel for violating the Convention of the Genocide, where the court in 3 instances gave provisional orders mentioning the starvation, basically, and the need for aid to enter Gaza without any obstruction and immediately. We also have the ICC arrest warrants against Netanyahu and the former defense minister, Gallant. That's something we need to build on. The example of Hungary, which said it will not implement the ICC arrest warrants, and then now with the change of government, Hungary said that it will abide by the arrest warrant, only proves the importance of having this legal base.
They shouldn't have said anything.
Yeah, but... So it's a legal base. We need to build on it, to exert pressure on it, and then challenging the double standards. I mean, it's... Just building on what Wassim was saying, the ICC goes for low-cost defendants when there are no political, risks to be taken, in the case of Syria, obviously, but not in the case of Israel. And then understanding that impunity only encourages broadening the scales of the crime in terms of geographic scales, like it crosses borders, and then the scale in terms of the numbers and the patterns by which it was implemented. I mean, shortly after issuing the arrest warrants against Netanyahu, he specifically mentioned Syria. He's like, no ICC warrants were issued against the Bashar al-Assad or others. And we have seen the same patterns being repeated in Mariupol, in Ukraine, in Sudan. So this only shows that impunity will only encourage the expansion of these atrocious crimes.
I'd like to ask you a particular question, because if I think of what you said earlier about Yarmouk, or how you spoke about Yarmouk, or what we heard in the first half of this evening about the place, and if I look at, the few trials or the very few people who are being held, or hopefully in the future, who are going to be held accountable, it's right that people should pay for their crimes, but none of this is going to bring back Yarmouk as it was before 2011. And as we know from other, say, former crime scenes, let's call it, people will be forced to live in the same space, victims and perpetrators. And Syria or Damascus is not such a vast place. I mean, you will run into people of whom you will know on which side they were fighting through those years of the war, and what some experts would, by the way, label genocidal violence. It's just, I think, a matter of the definition that it is not classified as a genocide. because political groups are not included in that definition. So my question to you would be, how can what does it even mean to serve justice to victims if you look at a scenario like the one I just laid out a minute ago?
أول شيء بالنسبة إلي أنا ما بعرف العدالة مثل ما بيعرفها القضاة ولا مثل ما بتدرس بكتب القانون الدولي والإنساني. أنا بعرفها مثل إحساس حالة برد بتفوت على الجسم ساعة ما بتشوف شيء ما لازم يصير. يعني بشوفها بحالة ابنها ببساطة بغزة مثلا، بالبريج، بحي الدرج، بأي مكان بالعالم، أي مكان بالعالم، طفل بده ياكل جوعان ببساطة، بيقول له أمه بدي آكل، بس هي ما عندها رغيف خبز تعطيه. أنا هاي الحالة غياب جواب الأم ما عندها جواب، ما عندها رغيف خبز طعميه للولد، غياب جواب الأم هذا هو غياب العدالة ببساطة. يعني هيك كتير سيمبل أنا عم بحكي. هلأ بالنسبة للحالة اللي عم تحكي عنها تحديداً يا رياض، هلا في أنواع من العدالة. في عدالة ترميمية، يعني هي ترميم الخطأ أو الجرم اللي صاير من خلال جبر المتضرر أو تعويضه، هذا جزء. في الحالة العدالة الاجتماعية، بمعنى أن تكون كل هالناس متساوية، ما في حالة فوق هاي وحالة تحت. المشكلة أنه قراءتنا لهاي الحالة، الحق، العدل، هاي مسائل معيارية، كيف ممكن نفهمها؟ أنا أيديولوجيتي لأي مدى بتخليني أعرف أنه هذا حق وهذا باطل؟ مثلا هذا سؤال. أنا ممكن في عدالة اسمها عدالة انتقامية، يعني المظلوم بياخذ حقه من الظالم. طبعا وأنا ضد هاي المسألة. أنا بحالة أمجد يوسف وهو ليس ضابطا يا رياض، هو مو ضابط حتى نكون يعني واضحين، هو كان حالة ما هيك بتقوم بمجازر، عمل مجازر بمخيم اليرموك وخاصة بجورة التضامن، يعني كانت في حالات إعدام كثيرة، وهو ناشط بالدفاع الوطني اللي عاملينه هناك، يعني بياخذ أوامره عليا، بس كان عنده شهوة القتل، شهوة التوحش. هلأ أنا عندنا بالمعنى الديني لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى، بهذا المعنى، يعني بمعنى إنه أنا إذا عملت ذنب، وسيم ابني بس هو ما عمل الذنب، ما له علاقة فيه، بتحاسبوني أنا على الذنب، لكن ما بصير تحاسبه وسيم ما عمل شيء. داليا حكت كلمة ما زبطت، طب رياض ما مسؤول عنها، هي اللي حكت، هي بتتحمل هاي المسؤولية. بالتالي محاسبة الجنات يجب أن تكون بالمعنى الشخصي، يعني المسألة ما هي عامة، ما هي شاملة، لأنه المجتمع السوري أنتم ما بتتصوروا من قديش فيه مشاكل الآن بالمعنى السيسيولوجي. الدم ثقيل عنا، الدم دائما ثقيل، والضحايا كانت من كل الطوائف، من كل المذهبيات، من كل الحالات. طيب يعني أنا مثلا واحد من سلمية قتل واحد من مخيم اليرموك، بروح أحارب كل أهل سلمية؟ لا. طب السلمية في ناس معارضة كمان دفعت ثمن ودم. بالتالي أنا حالة الخصومة والعدالة ما هي فردية بالمعنى الفردي، يعني في ترميم مجتمعي لازم يصير، محاكمة الجنات، وبدءا من الهرم. يعني أنت ما تنزل للناس اللي عم تاخذ أوامر تحت. يعني مثلا أنا لو فرضنا بحالة غزة، أنا فيها أحاسب مثلا واحد بيشتغل على اللاسلكي؟ لا، ممكن أحاسب يوقف جالانت مثلا، أو أي حدا منهم، بحاسب نتنياهو، بحاسب سموتريتش، بحاسب بن جافير، هذول اللي عم يضخهم كم الكراهية العادي وكم الحقد العادي. وأتمنى من كل، يعني من ألمانيا مثلا، أنا عايشة ببرلين الآن، أتمنى من ألمانيا أنه يعني تطلع من حالة المظلومية هاي اللي كانت بعد مسألة دفعوا ثمنها كثير الألمان، يطلعوا من هاي الحالة، لأن نفس الحالة يلي عملها هتلر هي انعملت بالفلسطينية. أرجو الالتفات لهذا الموضوع. المجازر الجينوسايد صارت بغزة بطريقة يمكن أكثر من الهولوكوست. الناس يعني كثير عائلات كاملة محيت من السجل المدني بشكل كامل، يعني ما ضل حدا. الأطفال ما بيكبروا بغزة بالمناسبة لعلمك. الأولاد بغزة ما بيكبروا نهائيا. يعني بتمسك ولد تسأله شو حلمك، بس تكبر بيقول لك أنا ما رح أكبر، لأنه الطفولة عم تنقتل بغزة، مثل ما انقتلت مخيم اليرموك، مثل ما انقتلت بسوريا، مثل ما تنقتل بكل مكان في طوات. وأنا آسفة يعني تفضل.
I don't compare crimes. Crimes are crimes. There is no better in crime. And we say, there is an Arabic saying, who steals an egg learns how to steal a camel. So if you don't bring justice, for me, is a positive illusion that keeps society together. In order to know that a crime will be tried even after a while. So put it in your mind while you are doing the crime or before. But the problem that impunity is, in Syria, we know it. We know what impunity means. Like I told you about torture across 60 years or 70 years or more. But let's face it, in Myanmar against the Rohingya, where are they? Still in power. In Sudan, where are they? Still in power. In Israel, where are they? Still doing the crimes like Sudan. In Ukraine, and this is dragging all of us to lose part of our humanities, because as if we need to be on, are we on this side or on that side? It's as if it's a football match. It's not a football match. Let's be on the side of the values, not on the side of parties.
This is an excellent last word. Thank you, Wassim.
ثواني اوكي. شو مالك رياض؟ خليك
another last
خليك
word.
ديمقراطي. نحن عم نحكي عن العدالة شوي.
دعيين.
عم نحكي عن العدالة رياض. اوكي. أنا كنت دائما أتخيل العدالة مثل كفتين الميزان، وحاملتهن مرة هيك مغطية على عيونها، والكفتين متساويات، يعني مشان التساوي أمام القانون. يعني هيك كنت أشوفها. لكن بعدين عرفت إنه العدالة لا، مو هيك أبدا، لأنه في كفة ميزان بتكون راجحة نازلة والتانية عالية. بطلع على كفة الميزان اللي هي فوق وما بتساوي شيء نهائيا، بلاقي حياة بشر وحيوات ناس كتار مليانة ألم، مليانة وجع، مليانة جوع، والكفة الثانية هي عبارة عن ورقة فيها قانون فقط. وبطلع بقول يا ترى هاي الورقة اللي فيها قانون هي أغلى من حيوات الناس كلهم؟ هذا سؤال بيخطر على بالي كتير، بيخطر على بالي كتير. إذن لنكبر على مسألة المصالح الضيقة وننتصر للإنسان، الإنسان في كل مكان. شكرا.
Thank you. Given the time, I think the production team is going to kill me if I accept 2 final questions from the audience. And since I don't want to be killed, I would suggest that you approach us afterwards, individually or as a group. You can come and join us at How To, which I've been told is like a 3 minutes walk from here. And you can ask all the questions you want over a drink. Thank you very much for bearing with us. Thank you very much to the organizers. And thank you all for being here. Thank you very much to my panelists.